You must be worried about spending a lot of money when you hear about power plant. In fact, this household power plant does not cost more than $200, don't you believe it? Please watch the video carefully. Hi, my name is Ryan Taylor. And today, in this short video I'll tell you a life-changing story about how I figured out how to easily generate insane amounts of energy for the past 3 years. I'm talking about a simple device that can be used by any family around the world and can even change the course of the entire energy industry. Over the past year, over 17,000 people have also already successfully used the very same technique to get over tragic milestones such as hurricanes, snowstorms or floods. Based on technology we use on a daily basis, not only can it generate enough power to last through long harsh winters when temperatures outside go below zero, but it can ameliorate your power bill all year long. I'm sure you're already intrigued and you want to know all about how this system works. Honestly, it's like nothing you've ever seen, and in a few minutes from now you'll be outraged you ever paid a single cent to Big Electric. So you absolutely need to watch this short presentation today, while it's still up. I don't know how much longer I'll have this free presentation online, so watch this right now, while you still can. Before we continue, let me tell you who I am, and how it all started. As I mentioned before, my name is Ryan Taylor. I'm a 45-year-old geography teacher in Memphis, Tennessee. Folks who live here know that high energy bills are somewhat of an issue, and we have been fighting them for years. Click the link below the video to watch the full video for details. And we've never liked paying through our noses for simple things that everybody should afford. Like using the electric appliances without restriction. However, we simply settled thinking that's the economy, or maybe it'll be better next year, month after month struggling not to fall behind on bills. All that until the winter of 2015. December 29th, Tuesday. The absolute worst day of my life. The news warned the population about the rising of the freezing waters of Mississippi, but we never had problems. We were miles from the river and we were safe. But this time it was different. Around 7 p.m. news warned everybody in the area the river had risen like never before. After a few minutes all lights went off. I immediately thought it was a simple blackout. I went to check on my wife and 2 daughters. They were fine. For the moment. The Mississippi River had broken out of its bed and flooded the surroundings. It ripped down hundreds of power lines around our area and we suddenly found ourselves without power. My wife and I discussed about driving to my parents in Lexington, Kentucky, but we were looking at a 6-hour drive in the night. We decided to wait for the power to come back. Big mistake. The house was getting cold and it was getting cold fast. Night came and still no power. Click the link below the video to watch the full video for details. I tried calling the electric company on my cell phone to find out when power would be restored. But all I got was a pre-recorded message saying that they were aware of the problem and that it would be between 48 and 72 hours before the power would be back online. Quickly the temperature in our house reached around 40 degrees. Around midnight I went to check on my family and what I saw made me freeze in my tracks. My wife and daughters were lying on the bed, embracing each other, shivering in cold, muffled in thick blankets. You can't imagine how I felt not being able to protect my family. I rushed and wrapped my arms around them as I could in a futile attempt to give them what little body heat I had. And then my 5-year-old Lisa said in a shivering voice, "Daddy, I'm cold and I'm hungry, I wish we had a warm soup." I immediately burst in tears. It was the most devastating moment of my life. I felt like my world collapsed. I felt powerless because there was nothing I could do to protect the ones I cared for most. And I simply felt furious. Outraged about the fact that I knew I was the only one to blame for getting in this situation, and worse, for getting my family in this dangerous situation. I was furious that I was completely dependent on the electric company to power my home. And furious about the fact that for so many years I let it slide and thought maybe it'll be better next year, while those money-sucking electricity mobsters bled me and my family dry. It was the moment I realized I was at the end of my rope. I swore to myself I'd never put my wife and 2 daughters in a similar situation again. We left for my parents the very next day and came back after some time. I immediately began researching every single energy alternative I could find. I made it my sole purpose because leaving my family's well-being in the hands of electric companies clearly wasn't an option anymore. Not only did their power lines always seem to go down in unexpected moments, but their prices had been smothering me for more than a decade. I imagined the CEOs going to the bank and cashing out my hard-earned money, maybe even laughing while doing it. So I immediately began to look at the problem from every angle to break the chains Big Electric had around my family. There had to be something. Frustrated, I created a list of what I felt my new source of energy should be. Cheap and easy to obtain. Easy to move. If I needed to bug out of town, it needed to be something I can easily carry with me. Can use a constant source of power to create energy. If there was no sun, no gas or wind, it should still work fine without interruption. So I considered buying a heavy-duty generator. It's certainly a reliable source of power, so I looked pretty much into this option. However, when I started to consider the costs, I realized I was looking at a minimum $1,000 investment to get a really high-quality generator, not to mention the fuel usage. And with the fluctuating gas prices, try powering your home full-time with a generator. You'd need to use about 90 gallons of gas per month, and at a cost of around $250 or more to do it. Plus, it's not like I wanted to have a 90 gallons bomb around my family and house. So this option was off the list. Next, I considered using solar energy. I've heard the solar industry boomed over the last years and solar panels really can be effective. But maybe you've heard, here in Memphis, Tennessee, it can be overcast for a month straight during the winter and being dependent on solar panels becomes inadmissible. Not to mention that installing professional panels would have cost me an easy $11,000, and I certainly didn't have the money to invest. The idea to buy a DIY solar kit crossed my mind, but when I saw the costs, I changed my mind. Plus, I did some research on the subject and I found out that such kits rarely produce even 20% of the energy advertised. So I had only one option. If I wanted to make sure my family never goes through such an experience again, I had to create my own solution. It had to be something cheap and fast and easy to build because I definitely didn't have any technical skills to build complicated devices. Being a teacher doesn't really offer those kinds of skills. So I started looking into every other solution that could bring me the security for my family. Many sleepless nights passed and I was getting tired of surfing the internet for a simple solution. Yet one day, Kate, my wife, reminded me about my late Uncle Jack and his research in the energy field. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2004. He worked for an electric car company as a pioneer in this field. His life goal was to save the planet and offer our children a better life. As a professional researcher in this domain, he had the resources he needed to do it. And, setting his goal to help humankind, as he said, he dedicated his life to discovering new technology. And he did a thorough research. I remembered him telling me how electric eels can be used to produce huge amounts of energy. And maybe that sounds a bit strange, but there are some fish farms that are completely energy independent. However, that wasn't the solution for electric cars. And clearly, it wasn't for me either. The investment was too big, and I certainly wasn't going to take care of who knows how many eels all year round. Not to mention the danger I was putting my family in. So, while this option was off the table, I knew there had to be a solution out there. And that's when I remembered about the incredible technology that he pioneered. He told me about a spinning principle that is still being used in today's electric cars. Everybody, including the top engineers at the company, was shocked to see how easy the principle was. That very moment I realized the answer I was looking for was in front of my eyes. You're probably thinking that there's no way such a simple thing like the multiplication process could hold the key to energy independence. But the initial tests had been pretty promising. Let me explain the working principle, as I later discovered it. As you probably already know, in nature, there is the multiplication principle that translates into inducing a small amount of energy in a system and multiplying it with the spinning principle. That's the real secret. What you may not realize, however, is just how much energy such a principle can produce. The true secret of this energy is that it's so simple to obtain. And the fundamentals are so easy, yet few know this secret and it is rarely used. So, if properly applied, it can produce insane amounts of energy. This energy is used to recharge the system when it's not being used at its full potential. So, basically, it charges itself while providing power for whatever you need. That was the solution for my problem. Without wasting a second, I took some time off and told my wife and daughters I was going to visit their aunt. I kissed them goodbye and I swore myself I wouldn't come back without the solution. I went to Norman, Oklahoma, and talked with Amy, my late uncle's wife. She let me in my uncle's old study, and after many hours of going through dozens of projects I found what I was looking for. I skimmed them over and I realized that they held the key to take total control energy-wise. But what I didn't know exactly was how to capture this unique energy and how to build the device to meet my needs. I struggled to understand the plans for about a week, when Amy suggested calling Jason Newman, my uncle's best friend who had worked with him. She told me he was one of the best engineers at the lab. I called and told him my story and asked if he could help me decipher the plans my uncle left. Being an enthusiast in this field, he agreed. However, I insisted to set some basic rules. The device had to be incredibly cheap to build. I was already over my budget with the research, the trip and everything. It had to be very easy to build, so that I could explain it to my wife and kids to build it if God forbid something were to happen to me. So we started working on the project together. As a guy who studied energy sources with my uncle, Jason had a pretty good idea of the science behind how to get the most energy with this principle, and the plans clearly showed that. The first models we made were either too expensive or too complicated for me to build. We had some heated arguments, mainly because of me being stubborn. I needed the device to be cheap and simple. In the end, after several attempts, we finally came up with a prototype that seemed to be what we were looking for. The design was brilliant. We only used 3 wooden wheels, a hard cylinder, some belts and 2 cogwheels. Combined, these materials cost us $106 at Home Depot. However, I'm sure we could have found the parts at a junkyard for free, if we weren't in a rush. But the most important part is that it was incredibly safe. No fire, no dangerous fumes released, so we had zero worry about creating a dangerous explosive reaction. You simply had to place the components in the correct position. And because of the ingenious way the device was designed, it generated an extraordinary amount of energy, which was then captured and converted into usable electricity, at the same time powering itself without wasting any energy. Even more, the system was actually incredibly easy to hook up to any device, even if you're terrible at building stuff and have trouble plugging in a DVD player to your TV. So, after building the device, the next step was to test it out to see if it really worked as well as we thought it would. We connected some batteries for a few seconds to start the device and we just couldn't believe our eyes. The system reached the optimum rotations, and because of the brilliant design my uncle had come up with, all of that energy was immediately captured, providing a steady, robust supply of electricity turning on the light. At the same time, the generator was self-supplying itself, without the help of any external power. We hooked it up to a bunch of appliances and Amy had the rooms lit up to see if it holds. And not only were all the lights on, but she was running the refrigerator and the television no problem whatsoever. In truth, I almost couldn't believe how simple all of this was. Missing my family, I rushed home with the plans. I started building the device following the steps and, using most of the stuff lying around in my yard. After several hours, I built the device and tested it. It ran perfectly. For the rest of January, we used the generator and consumed the same amount of electricity that we always did before. But rather than pay $190 for our energy bill like we did in the past, we were running on belts and wooden wheels. That meant zero costs. All it had taken me was several hours of my time, and about $106 in initial costs. And my family was safe. I loved the fact that I was teaching my daughters such a great lesson about not being dependent on the government or any corporations. And I felt so relieved to know that they would always grow up in a warm, safe and comfortable home. Now, that was about 2 years and a half ago. And since then, my family and I saved more than I ever thought I would. And the generator holds true both in the coldest winter months, when the temperature can get down into the negative teens, as well as in the hottest, muggiest days of summer, when the thermometer soars past 100. Plus, using the same principle to make a few of Jason's witty tweaks, I managed to juice more power out of the generator. Enough to never worry about being energy dependent again. Well, before long my friends and family members were begging to know my secret. And when I showed them the simple generator Jason and I created, a lot of them had a hard time believing something so small could be creating so much energy. But after I'd given them the simple building instructions, and they'd followed them, and created their own power plant in several hours, they became believers fast. Because when the person who used this amazing invention was hooking it up to electrical appliances, the results were the same, an abundance of clean, easy energy that they could use to power anything. Using electricity without second thinking, blasting the AC during the summer, running their televisions, their kitchen lights, their garage doors, their most heavy-duty appliances. Soon my friends were telling their friends about my little miniature power plant. Until finally the number of phone calls and emails from people asking me to share the blueprints for my home power plant became too overwhelming. Kate put her foot down and told me that I had to find a better way to share this one-of-a-kind energy system with the world. So, I went to work rewriting out the blueprints, the materials list to show construction process in simple steps. And then Easy Power Plan was created. The product is digital and the images are for visualization only. The Easy Power Plan is a step-by-step guide showing you exactly how to create your own home power plant today, cutting down by 60% or more your electric bill in the next 30 days. As you already know, this system was specifically designed so that anyone with one hand can build it, even if you have difficulty plugging your charger into a cell phone. In fact, you'll be shocked by how few steps there actually are, and how short the list of materials you need to build this is. inside this system, which I'll tell you how you can access in just a second. You'll see exactly what those steps are, along with a full materials list that will help you build the system from start to finish. Even though it wasn't cheap for me to conceive this system, I think it's extremely valuable. Plus, because the files are something you can download to your computer, tablet, or smartphone. You'll be able to follow them anywhere, even if you decide to build your system down in the garage or outside. You'll also be given clear guides and written instructions detailing exactly how to connect your system to any appliance. All of the materials you need to build this will cost $106 total. But, like I mentioned, you can probably find about 90% of those materials for free in your garage or at a junkyard. Additionally, you're also going to be given a full list of tools and you'll see exactly how to use each one to build the device so that you have an unlimited power supply inside your home. You will never have to pay such high bills to the greedy electric companies again. Click the link below the video to watch the full video for details.